Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, and we are live from Boise, Idaho. I am Mark Reinhardt.
I'm Rob Gibbons. And Adam Heyman.
We have some stories today, and
hopefully an interview with Ian Freeman from Free Talk Live.
Yes, hopefully an interview with Ian Freeman from Free Talk Live.
Yeah, as soon as his number shows up, go ahead and patch him in.
All right, sounds good. What stories you got for today, man?
Well, I was just mentioning a bunch of things that just happened to catch my eye a second ago, but what I can more or less say is going along with the gnome's unhappiness with Julian Assange, I have this thing from the Daily Beast in the World News section. The Obama administration has asked Britain, Germany, Australia, and other allies to consider criminal charges against Julian Assange for his Afghan war leaks. This goes into the idea that Obama is not looking for real transparency in a sense, and this is actually an attack on what we can consider the United States. He's on. Excellent.
And we have with us on the program Ian Freeman of Free Talk Live. Hello, Ian. Welcome to the program.
Hey, good morning. Am I talking with Mark and someone else, or who's here?
Yes, you were talking with Mark, Ross Gibbons, and Adam Heyman.
How are you doing, Ian?
Mark. Hey, Mark, Adam, and what was it, Ralph?
Rob.
Ross.
Rob?
Yeah, whatever you want to say, Ian, really.
Okay, well, we have some questions for you, some about the Free State Project, some about the Free State Project's concepts of liberty. You are live with us from Boise, Idaho. What makes the Free State Project different from the U.S. government or governments around the world?
Well, the Free State Project is not a government, so that might be the first main difference. The governments are organizations of strange men and women who enforce their way on other peaceful people through the threat of violence or actual violence. And the Free State Project is an organization that is dedicated to bringing as many liberty-oriented people to the same place, which is New Hampshire, and encouraging them to get as active as they possibly can in order to achieve liberty in our lifetime. So a number of the people in the movement are either very minimal government types, or like me, they don't believe in any monopoly on violence. So there's a big difference.
Okay. Another question I have is, what brought you into the ideas of liberty?
That is a good question. I was probably back when I was getting close to the end of being in high school in the late 1990s, when somebody, I don't know if it was, I don't recall how I ended up getting my hands on it, but I ended up coming across Harry Browne and the Libertarian Party, and Harry Browne was at the time the presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party, and I found his book, Why Government Doesn't Work, and that was a real eye-opener for me.
Okay. That's really cool, Ian. Can I have a quick question with you? By any chance, would you like to talk about the recent things between the Shire Society and L. Neil Smith?
Sure. What do you want to know?
Well, quite frankly, what exactly have you found out about I'm sorry. I'm trying to call off guard. Mark has the questions here.
Okay. In terms of the issues that the Shire Society and L. Neil Smith have been at odds, with that in mind, what are your thoughts on intellectual property rights?
Well, I don't believe in intellectual property. I think that intellectual property is an idea that was come up with in order to, I think the best of intentions were had, in that people that come up with creative works or inventions, that sort of thing, wanted to have their ideas and their work protected. But unfortunately, they've turned to the coercive monopoly in order to do that. And I think that has had some real detrimental effects to the ability for people to create and to create new wealth based on old ideas. I think it's sad that we don't really know what wonderful things could have been created in the absence of all this government coercion. So in the case of the L. Neil Smith situation, that science fiction author L. Neil Smith was very upset that the people from the Shire Society borrowed some of his ideas, which of course he borrowed from other people, We borrowed some of his ideas in the form of his new covenant that he wrote back in the 1980s, and we heavily modified that to create the Shire Society Declaration. And he got pretty upset about it and made us think publicly, and it probably ended up working out best for both of us because there was a lot of controversy that kind of swelled up around that, a lot of conversation, internet posts and blog posts on places like Mises.org about this. And, of course, Mises was very favorable toward the Shire Society and Free Talk Live and, kind of our side of things. So that was good for us, and I'm sure he probably sold a few extra books as a result of his the extra publicity.
Yeah. What brought this more or less question camp because Mark had told me at one point in time when we were discussing what kind of things we'd ask you today that the Free State Project wiki page supposedly had credited the ideas for the Free State Project to L. Neil Smith as well to a certain degree. I'm not seeing it on the wiki page right now, mind you, but...
Right, because keep in mind Wikipedia is not really that much of a good source if it can be edited, things, details, things like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, moving on.
You can actually jump in with one here.
Okay, Adam has a question for you, Ian.
And
Sure.
forgive me, I'm kind of playing catch-up on the whole Free State Project. It was just recently introduced to me. And
Well, not the recent one out there. I tried to tell you as much as I could about it.
pardon me while I smack him, but anyway. My understanding is that the goal is to have a whole bunch of people move to one state and ultimately get that one state to secede from the Union and set up a non-government, for lack of a better term.
Is that
about accurate?
Not quite. There may be some people within the movement that would agree with that statement. The Free State Project is all it exists for is to encourage liberty-minded people to make the move to New Hampshire. And then what they do when they get here is up to them. So the Free State Project, and I'm not a spokesman for them or anything, excuse me, the Free State Project would say something like if you had Varen Swearingen, the president of the Free State Project, on, he would probably say something like, well, the Free State Project doesn't take positions on issues like secession because it only exists to encourage people from around the country and around the world to make the move to New Hampshire. So I think you probably would find, if you interviewed a bunch of different individual Free Staters, like if you came out to the Porcupine Freedom Festival next summer or the Liberty Forum this wintertime, the very end of winter, and you talk to individual Free State Project participants, you'd probably find a lot of support for the idea of secession, but it's not officially a secessionist movement. It's just a project to move liberty-minded people to New Hampshire, if that makes sense.
That does make sense, Ian. And with that in mind, I have another question. What does liberty mean to you personally?
The ability to live one's life however one wants, so long as one is not harming others, to follow the natural laws of do no harm and honor one's agreements.
Okay. Forgive me for not having looked on your economic liberty ideas page. But the question I have is for listeners who aren't familiar with the Free States Project's ideas on economic liberty. How will economic liberty-based ideas increase the quality of human life?
Well, again, the Free State Project doesn't take positions on any issues, so I don't think it has any information like that. Can you rephrase the question one more time?
Oh, sure. Not a problem, Ian. For listeners who aren't familiar with the ideas of economic liberty, I think would be a better way to pose it, is how would that work, and what applications would be presented in that form? Is that a better question, sir?
It's still a little bit confusing. Are you asking about people that aren't familiar with the benefits of economic liberty as far as what those benefits would be?
Yes, that's what I've been asking. Sometimes I have trouble wording questions, sir. So,
For novices, people who, like me, traditionally spend more time just trying to keep afloat and focus in their own little world, for just now starting to look at the bigger picture and question things like, is the status quo really the best way to go about it? Is there a better way? You're proposing something new to us, and this economic liberty that it's becoming evident that we don't have, even though we've been told since the day we were born that we're in a free country. what is
right.
economic liberty versus compared to what we have now, and how would it benefit you?
Sure, great question. I think that, well, first of all, a lot of people are struggling to keep afloat, and probably one of the big reasons for that is because they're being robbed left and right by these criminal gangs known as the governments or the state of fill-in-the-blank or the city of fill-in-the-blank. And so in the absence of all of that coercion and all of those government people forcing money and obedience from you, then it probably would be a little bit easier to stay afloat. You know, if you weren't paying upwards of 50% of the money that you earn in taxes to these government organizations, you'd have a lot more money that you could spend, save, or give away in the way that that you thought was best, as opposed to the way some unaccountable bureaucrats think is best. And Dr. Mary Ruwart, in her book Healing Our World, talks about how it is that when these government people take this money, and sometimes they'll say, well, you know, it's being used for to help people, it's being used to you know, to feed people, and da-da-da-da. You know, they come up with all these examples of these wonderful government programs and why we supposedly need to have them around. And it's a bunch of poppycock because the way these government programs work, even the ones that ostensibly help people, they have an incredible amount of overhead attached to them. So in like a government welfare program, you'll find that 60 to 70% of the money that comes into that program is actually going out to the bureaucrats that run the program. And then you get the people that are getting the benefits are getting they're getting maybe 30 or 40%. And of course, of all the people that are getting the benefits, only some of them are actually worthy as far as, you know, they're not scamming the system or something like that. So I don't know what those percentages are, but my point being that a dollar given to a private charity is far more powerful to actually help people that need help than a dollar stolen from you and forced from you to a government. So the economic benefits would be tremendous in that individuals would be able to decide for themselves, as I mentioned earlier, how to spend, save, and give away their own money, which means those resources would be allocated much more accurately rather than having some you know, government bureaucrat that doesn't even know you deciding how to spend your money for you. It would make a tremendous difference in the amount of wealth that people would be able to create and the quality of life that we would be able to have.
A follow-up question. What you're proposing sounds like what we started with. What went wrong?
What we started with? Are you referring to people who were alive a couple hundred years ago?
91, 92.
I think you're referring to the federal government.
Way back when the nation was in its infancy, and the concepts that have been described sound like what was proposed back then, and the way things more or less worked. Not how it is now. What went wrong?
Yeah, I'm sorry. When were you referring to? 1991 or 1791?
1791, sir.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that there's a lot of, or clearly there was a lot less government back then, but I think there's also a lot of, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for here, a kind of mythology that goes on with what things were like back then, because clearly a lot of things are better now. We've got technology and the advancement of many markets and things like that. Oh, and we don't have slavery today, which is also a nice change. So I think the idea that things were so much better back then is a little bit fallacious.
No, not everything.
Clearly, again, there wasn't as much government to oppress people, but on the other hand, many of the people that created the federal government back then were still power seekers, as was evidenced by, you know, what happened when they actually took the power. I mean, you've got examples of what George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and people like that who said some really nice things about freedom, but when they actually took the reins of power, they were just little tyrants too. I mean, clearly not as tyrannical as, say, George Bush or Barack Obama, but they didn't have as much tyranny to build off of. So I think that I don't think that I want to go back in time. I want to move forward and evolve to a peaceful, voluntary society. I don't think there's any use whatsoever for the idea of a coercive monopoly.
Well, you know, it's funny you mentioned that, because on the drive here, I and I were discussing the federal income tax, and I made a point of saying that, as I understood it, was properly ratified to the Constitution, then it more or less basically took away the 13th Amendment outlawing of slavery, the only exception being that instead of having private slavery, you have a sort of public slavery. And